While Thomas has gotten sloppy in the past, he masterfully creates this kind of misdirection, which leaves the police frazzled and even turning on their own. The first topic deals with Nathan's attempt to meet Thomas, but unfortunately for Nathan, Thomas has no desire to meet up face to face. Instead, he has Nathan go throughout the greater London area, going from a train station to the back of some convenience store, and he just pretty much creates this cat and mouse game just to mess with Nathan, to kind of get him on edge so that when he does have the chance to possibly meet up, he'll have a weapon in hand and possibly try to kill him. But rather than kill Thomas, he would accidentally kill a civilian because what Thomas is trying to do is to make Nathan be seen as a monster that he sees him as. And while he doesn't get him that way in terms of having Nathan kill someone in broad daylight, unfortunately for Nathan, Lake has been following him thanks to a car track and just stepping behind him. And it has made it so she has a good amount of evidence against him. But what doesn't help Nathan's case is that Emily is also starting to look into things based off of having that scrambler code and looking into Joel. And she pretty much catches Nathan in a series of lies dealing with him going to see Keith, the Joel thing, and it makes it so when Lake presents her information, Emily's at that point where she can't really defend Nathan that much because she knows he's lying. Other people know he's lying, so. And not to forget that he's lying to her face. So, what can she really do? At this point, while she may not believe Lake's theory that Nathan is an accomplice to the Foss/Thomas, she does have to realize that he's doing something that's not necessarily aiding the investigation since he's keeping all these secrets. So the second topic deals with the next person on Thomas's hit list, Andrew Daly. To make a long story short, Andrew Daly is an anagram, and it's actually Andrea, the news reporter, that's the next target. But rather than it just be him taking her out something simple and quick, he decides to make it a little bit more complicated. He uses some ancient medieval device that was used on witches to cut her tongue and make her basically bleed to death. Well, she drowns based off of swallowing her own blood, but if that didn't happen, then she would have bled to death. But to make it really complicated, it seems that between when Thomas was having Nathan follow him, or possibly at a later time, Nathan got drugged, and so he was knocked out while Adriana was being killed. But to make matters worse, those two were being intimate at the time because Andrea was ready to get the hell out of Dodge and go off to the States. But unfortunately, she didn't make it. Between her and Nathan having sex or something else, the Foss came in, aka Thomas, knocked them both out, put that device on Andrea's head, and unfortunately, next thing Nathan knows, the cops are busting in. He's covered in Andrea's blood, and he looks extremely guilty. And yes, they do test him and see that, oh yes, he was drugged. But the problem is, so much has happened thus far that between Lake's theories and then Emily's doubts that makes Nathan look guilty, that it's hard to say this is just circumstantial. The third topic deals with what happens after Nathan was found with Andrea's body. Starting off, Emily is just unsure of how to process this whole thing. And it's kind of to the point where Finley tries to convey that maybe it's not the best idea for Emily to handle the fact that pretty much Nathan has to get charged and will lose his badge. But between Emily being Nathan's friend, or maybe former friend at this point, and also being his superior, she feels the need to take this on. From the get-go, she doesn't do this the right way. She starts by going into the bathroom where Nathan is still cleaning off Andrea's blood, and she decides to tell him while he's still stark naked, he is no longer a cop, and he's being charged. This doesn't cause the mental breakdown that Finley thought would happen, but you can tell that Nathan is now starting to get into a desperate mode because he starts divulging all the information he has been holding back from Emily all this time. He talks about Keith and why he was there. He talks about Thomas and all the way that Kate described him. And it's kind of like in a too little too late situation right now, but it does stay in the back of Emily's mind. However, being that she has to charge Nathan and she's kind of getting sick and tired of him, she, with his badge no longer there, with her taking his badge, pretty much makes that bathroom he's cleaning up into like a temporary holding cell. And because of him being stuck in there, he starts to formulate a way to get out. But before we get to how he gets out, it should be noted that while he's in there stuck, Emily and Lake are looking into Andrea's body and they notice a skin tag fall off. With that, they look into Joy, who's Andrea's makeup artist at the talk show, and it's agreed that they're going to speak to her. No sooner than Lake kind of got this victory, because she and Emily are now closer than ever, she gets a call from Nathan, who notes that he has read Hannah's letter to Lake, knows about Naomi Green, and he pretty much says that he's going to blackmail her. Now, as for who Naomi Green is in that letter, some questions are answered, some questions are not. It's not clarified whether or not Naomi was in that trunk when we saw Lake driving on that dirt road. What we do know is Naomi killed somebody and Lake paid the bail. But again, the question is, did Naomi eventually show up to court or not? Did she go on a run or not? Was she in Lake's trunk possibly because Lake was trying to get her to court? It's as much as we got one answer to what the letter was and what was it about. Unfortunately, now we got a bunch of questions about Naomi and whether or not she's still alive, whether she was in the trunk, hell, we don't even know who she killed and why. We just know that it was one of Naomi's associates. But that aside, Nathan has material that can ruin Lake's career, so she decides she's going to slip Nathan her badge, and Nathan uses that to escape. Emily learns about this, that Nathan's escaped, not that he used Lake's badge, and she's so exasperated with this whole Nathan situation that she doesn't even try to chase him down. She instead decides to just go back to looking at the Ragdoll killer's work, piecing it back together, and just doing an investigation with Finley. In the process of this, they learn that Thomas is left-handed, and that because he's left-handed, he sewed up the Ragdoll a specific way. This makes Emily think about Keith, because Keith had that mark on his head, and that she saw some guy when she was helping with Eric Turner. She puts two and two together, takes also, I should note, Nathan's description of Thomas, and she pretty much busts the case. The problem is with all this, while she told Lake to wait for her before they go see Joy, Lake decides to go on her own, and Joy is very much aware of what her husband does. Thomas is her husband, not her son, nephew, whatever. That's husband and wife. Anyway, Lake goes to their house alone, leaves a voicemail message letting Emily know. But what isn't clear is between Lake leaving that voicemail message to Joy entertaining Emily, and then Thomas coming home and knocking Lake out, it isn't clear how much time there is between Emily hearing that voicemail message and Thomas likely bringing Lake down to his basement to do whatever it is he's going to do. Never mind, if you see one of the previews for the next episode, Emily's going to run into Nathan, and who knows how much he may slow her down from getting to Lake. So the first highlight is, I feel like we got the way Thomas should have been introduced to us this episode. Rather than showing him in that warrior enactment, showing him cutting somebody open and then him getting real cocky after killing Matthew Wingate, I feel that we should have got Thomas how we saw him in this episode. Somebody who still very much worked in the shadows, who we never saw the clear face of, until that moment where Lake realizes that she was in trouble. Because if they did that, especially with this being a penultimate episode, with the next episode being a season, perhaps series finale, I'm not sure how they're going to work this show, it would have been such a bigger thing, in my opinion. Yet, instead, we got this cocky dude who does still have this creep factor to him, but I would say it's a little bit inconsistent. But still, just getting a kind of taste of what we could have gotten, it's still a highlight for us. The second highlight is, I have to admit, I'm quite excited for the finale of this show. Yes, there are so many things that have been left unanswered, from Naomi Green not fully being fleshed out. Then you have, of course, not getting to know Emily's people and her being more than just, this woman of color who's in this power position. But right now, it's not clear whether or not Thomas would actually kill Lake. She knows too much, so she has to be handled, and I don't see Thomas as a person that keeps someone in his basement having Joy feed them like their pet. It could be possible, but I don't think with them living in a suburban area they do that's really going to happen. So, you have Lake in Thomas's basement, likely. You have Nathan on the run trying to possibly solve this without the whole information about Joy. And then you have Emily, who has to try to save Lake while also dealing with the fact that after that whole Wingate thing, I'm pretty sure that her name doesn't have as much oomph as it used to have, so whether or not she can get Finley and everybody else to join her is a whole different thing. Never mind, this is all assuming that Thomas and Joy stay at their home and don't move Lake to somewhere else. Because yes, we saw that Thomas has this whole thing at his home in the basement, and we also know he works at the prison, so we could move her there, but who's to say that he doesn't have another location that he holds things at? Because just him taking Nathan through that whole backroom thing, it shows you that he knows his way around the area, so there's always the chance that he has some type of place, like in that weird basement that he had Nathan go into, where he has an additional storage area for all of his little traps and gadgets. Which leads to the on-defense topic. As noted in the highlights, I do feel like, as much as I'm excited about the finale, and I do feel like they kind of redeemed the way Thomas was handled, you do have to look at, as a whole, the show kind of having more missteps than having, good parts to it. Because we're about to enter the final episode, the final hour, and Lake's past is still kind of murky, even with this Naomi Green reveal. Nathan's situation is, his relationship with Emily is still kind of in that weird gray area, even though we know that things are not good now, but in the past it's still what were they? And then with Emily, she's still, as I just said maybe a minute or two ago, still stuck in this realm of her life as a cop is kind of what mostly defines her. Now, in this episode, they do talk about how her dad was a cop and he got, not a cop, her dad was a military officer, I believe, and he got killed possibly by a cop. It's kind of confusing. The way that I think it was, her dad was some kind of officer, military or else a police officer. He got killed by friendly fire. This caused a lot of money issues for her and her mother. So they sued the police, and of course Andre and a bunch of other people ran with this story. And all of this is nice to hear that, oh yeah, she had this kind of childhood where she lost her father and everything, but it's one of those things where it's I prefer they would have showed me the relationship with her father, maybe her relationship with her mother at this point, her brothers, her community, rather than just telling us through us seeing a news article for picture with her being young. A little thing between Nathan asking Andrea why would she run the story, and Andrea once again saying I had no choice because if I did it somebody else would, yada yada yada. And I don't know. I think overall what Ragdoll is kind of showing us is that it wasn't really that committed to character development. It was more so focused on story, which is one of those things when it comes to us doing a season review hopefully next week. it will probably be on the list of things that are on defense.